Welcome to the Off the Charts Football Podcast. In this pre-Super Bowl preview week, we've got exciting guests on the show for you today, joining myself, Matt Manocherian, and our producer, Justin Stein. First up, we will have Jesse Newell, Chiefs beat reporter for the Kansas City Star. We recorded that on Tuesday, so an early look at some of the matchups in this game from the Chiefs' perspective. And then recorded this Thursday, Bo Wulf, the Eagles reporter for The Athletic, came on to talk about things from an Eagles perspective. Without further ado, let's get into it. Up next on the podcast, we have a special guest from one of the teams participating in the Super Bowl. That is Jesse Newell, the Chiefs beat reporter for the Kansas City Star. Jesse, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going? Going to be a busy couple weeks here.
Yeah, busy couple weeks, exciting couple of weeks. I was just looking around, like checking the injury report mostly, and I thought it was crazy. CEH has been out since November, right? Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Do you know what injury he has off the top of your head?
Yeah, I do. It's a high ankle sprain.
It is so absurd that he's been out since November, and here we are, and we just saw Mahomes do what he just did. I think that's maybe the most mind-blowing way that I think you could like put this all into context. And it's not ridiculous that Edwards-Helaire is out too.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I mean, we do have to take context a little bit into this where it's kind of a rotational injury where, you know, if you try to stop and start, that's kind of where it gets a little bit, barks at you a little bit. So running back, obviously.
Different for a running back.
Yeah, running back's happening every play. I mean, another example of this is Harrison Butker suffered one in the very first week, and he's been dealing with it all year. I mean, he had a really rough stretch during the middle of the season, and, you know, it was a conversation week 11, week 12, week 13. Again, same thing. If you're trying to stop on a foot and you are a kicker, it makes a more of a difference than maybe if you're a quarterback and kind of stand back there. But it's remarkable what Mahomes did in 1 week. And, yeah, for him to take what's normally a 4 to 6 week injury and turn it into a 4 to 6 hour or 4 to 6 day injury, it's pretty phenomenal what he did.
Yeah, just absolutely ridiculous. That's why he's the best player in the NFL. And then not to mention, he did that all with receivers dropping like flies from Kadarius Toney and Juju Smith-Schuster and everybody else. Was really sort of kind of out there almost alone at a certain point, but managed to do just enough. So congratulations to all of Chiefs Kingdom.
Yeah, and it was crazy. The Chiefs were down to 3 receivers at the end of that game. They did some roster shuffling before, but, you know, just a couple things to put that in perspective. For one, Sky Moore had the 29-yard punt return to set him in field goal range. Going into the week, he was their 4th string punt returner. He had fumbled 3 punts already this year. So I know the plan was not to put him back there in the AFC Championship game in a tie game. But sure enough, you know, Kadarius Toney went out, McCole Hardman was out, Justin Watson was sick earlier in the week and was inactive. So that's one. The other thing you can go look at is Marcus Kemp. He actually didn't play for the Chiefs last week, was not an active player, more known for his special teams. He played 10 offensive snaps all season for the Chiefs. He played 11 offensive snaps for the Chiefs in the 4th quarter of the AFC Championship game against the Bengals. So, again, just a couple of things to let you know what Mahomes and the whole team were dealing with.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of just how many Chiefs games I've watched of the past couple of years, and I'm looking, who is this dude? So it was pretty ridiculous. All right, I want to dive in, and I want to kind of like look ahead a little bit to some of the Super Bowl matchups, since we're kind of getting an early crack at this game, thinking about how things might play out. So the Chiefs were the top offensive team this year, and I know you're familiar with what we do at Sports Info Solutions with total points. They're the top overall offense this year and the top team this year in terms of total points per game. But as Bryce Rossler has pointed out many times, this is the best defense of the Patrick Mahomes era based on our statistics. What is it that's different about this year's defense relative to what we've seen the past few years?
Yeah, so I would bring up a couple things in particular. Number one is sort of what they did with this draft, which is pretty crazy when you go back and look at exactly what happened. The Chiefs, you know, I just got on the beat here in May, you know, right after the draft. But a lot of the talk before the draft around here was the Chiefs don't need all these draft picks. They should trade some and consolidate. They don't have that many roster holes. Turns out they drafted 10 players. All 10 players are on the roster still. And that just doesn't happen in the NFL. So you look at kind of what they did. You know, Tyrann Mathieu left in free agency. They did not make much of an effort to re-sign him. Daniel Sorensen was another safety who obviously was roasted a few times down the stretch last year, and kind of the Chiefs were criticized for continuing to play him. Anthony Hitchens was a linebacker that was no longer with them. Nick Bolton has stepped in his spot there. But it is kind of an interesting philosophy where the Chiefs last year sort of relied on experience. And this year, they basically went the other direction. They went all to youth and just basically said, these guys are going to play with their hair on fire. They're going to make some mistakes, but they trusted their ability to develop those players. And so what you have there is certain plays in the AFC Championship game. The Chiefs had 5 rookies on the field defensively. And again, they performed well and they performed better as the season's gone on. You start with first round pick Trent McDuffie. Jalen Watson, a 7th round pick, has come up big for them. A couple of the biggest plays of the year with interceptions he's made, including the one-handed one in the AFC divisional game against the Jaguars. Joshua Williams, he really got roasted against the Bengals in the first matchup. He comes up huge for them here in the second matchup when L'Jarius Sneed goes down with his concussion. So you add that to the other thing I was going to bring up, which is the 6 defensive back look, the dime look that they've been bringing out lately. And that's not always best against the run, but we know what happens this time of year is the pass game kind of trumps all. So if you look at the last 5 or 6 games for the Chiefs, they go to 4-1-6. They actually take a linebacker off the field. They do that more than any other team in the NFL. And so you saw this past game against the Bengals where it really could come big for them. For one, they can kind of fake some pressure on the inside, bring different pressure looks that Steve Spagnuolo likes to make offensive linemen question themselves. And that also gets Chris Jones some single teams. Before this past week, I saw that Chris Jones actually had 5.5 sacks out of the Chiefs dime look, which lets you know some of that fake pressure that they do is able to get him single teams, get him to the quarterback. But besides that, again, when you have these rookies performing, we saw Brian Cook. He got beat by Jamar Chase earlier in this game against the Bengals. The second time around, he bats up the pass, and Joshua Williams, another rookie, intercepts it. So we've seen them be more comfortable with that look and take away other teams' pass games lately. So I would say those 2 things are kind of a big part of what's made this defense better than it has been in the past.
Yeah. Oh, man, you just said so much stuff. I couldn't agree more. That last point, playing in the dime a little bit more. They've done it a little bit more throughout the year, but especially lately, like you said. And then from that, what they do is they will blitz. They will do zone pressure. They will do man pressure. They'll come and kind of mix it up, staying with this pre-snap, middle of field open look. We're all just back here in a nice shell. But then actually, just like Spag likes to do, it gets into something complicated. I'm so fascinated by the thing about all the rookies because, yeah, by our numbers, we like McDuffie. The other guys, the fact that they've played as much as they've had is a real testament to them. Not that any of them have been outstanding back there. But again, I think of the Spags defense, and from my time with him in New Orleans, it is complicated. It is not something that's just easy to learn for most players. And it's fascinating to me that what they did, as opposed to saying, like, we're going to get these savant-like veterans, right? Like the type of player like a Honey Badger who can fit into any defense. We're going to just get these young guys that are clean slates. And if it's a blank palette, we can work with that. We can teach them what we need to teach them if they haven't already been taught something else that's kind of like poisoning their development. So it's a super different way to slice it. I wouldn't have expected that to work as well as it has on that front. But if you told me going into last week that L'Jarius Sneed goes down and they're able to handle those receivers as well as they did, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah, I mean, they traded Rashad Fenton, who was a veteran for them mid-season. I mean, they were so confident in the rookies that they had, and they've been kind of, from training camp, they jokingly called them the Fab Five, the 5 defensive backs that they took back there, including Nazeeh Johnson, who's a contributor on special teams. But, I mean, it is really amazing if you just take a step back and say, wow, you know, on most of those plays last game, you've got McDuffie, Watson, Williams, Cook, all in the secondary. You got 4 rookies in the secondary taking on Jamar Chase and, you know, Joe Burrow in this offense and doing a pretty good job for the most part. But I agree with you. You know, there were so many questions for Spags before the year started was like, are you going to simplify the defense? Are you going to simplify the defense? And for the most part, it was simpler. It's sort of like you just rely on these young players to kind of fly around and execute that really well. We saw a lot of cover 2, just kind of the shell sorts of stuff early. But I do think the dime has added that wrinkle because if we know anything about Spags, he's really good at bringing pressure off the edge. You know, L'Jarius Sneed came up with some huge plays for the Chiefs early this year with some of these blitzes, but even lately we've seen Jalen Watson do it. We've seen Justin Reed, a safety, come in there. And so it kind of allows that sort of creativity that Spags likes. And also having Brian Cook who can come inside, you know, up, back, inside, outside, those sorts of things. It allows that kind of versatility as they've gotten more comfortable with them late in the season, while also kind of keeping the assignments relatively simple too. So it is kind of that mix and that balance. And Spags has done a great job this year of balancing that whole thing out.
So it's been fun. But on the other side, they're facing the Eagles that have the second ranked offense and we're the second ranked overall team in total points. They have the best late down success rate on offense. And that's not a surprise when you think about their ability to run the ball in those situations and their willingness to go for it on 4th and down if they can get it in there to that 4th and short. A couple things that we've learned from studying the numbers here is that teams obviously should be going for it more often on 3rd and 4th and short. The Eagles embrace that. They'll make that something that'll be difficult from a game management standpoint to keep up with. And the other thing that they do is they run the ball in those situations. We're always talking about analytics, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. Well, except if it's 3rd or 4th and 1 or 2 yards to go. In that case, teams should be running it more than they actually do. So the Eagles do that extraordinarily well. Chris Jones is just one player. Are you concerned about the matchup between the Eagles' number 2 ranked offensive front and the Chiefs' number 22 ranked defensive front based on the 30-13 matchup tool?
Yeah. And again, when we talk about going to dime, there's the best way you can go to dime is if the other team's pass it all the time, right? I mean, the what you leave yourself open with is you've got smaller bodies on the field. And so that might not be a tool the Chiefs can utilize against the Eagles in the Super Bowl unless the Eagles get down and have to throw the football. And sort of that's maybe where the Chiefs kind of thrive a little bit, is that sometimes they do get up and they are able to, like the Raiders game in the season finale, they're able to throw the dime out there because the Raiders, if they're running the ball, they're really just killing themselves if you're down, 2 scores or more. But no, I think so. It's interesting. You kind of are jogging my memory about conversation we had with Brett Veach, the GM, in training camp before the season started. And I just sort of asked him kind of generically about, hey, why did you sign Justin Reed? I mean, they really targeted him as a safety coming in here after Tyrann Mathieu left. And I was just kind of curious, well, why would you bring him in? And it was interesting, his response. He said, look, in the AFC, a lot of times in the playoffs, you're going to have to go against a Josh Allen. You're going to have to go against a Lamar Jackson. And the Chiefs liked Justin Reed's ability to come downhill and tackle while still keeping a lighter personnel on the field, if that makes any sense, to be able to go down there and make those sorts of plays. But that also maybe speaks to a bigger picture topic, which is this is something the Chiefs have dealt with and have struggled with, to be honest with you. Like when they play the Ravens a lot lately in the regular season, Lamar Jackson's had success. And we know why that's tough to stop. Is because you don't need as many blockers and you don't even need as many hats in the run game because the quarterback isn't handing it off and you get that free defender. The quarterback is the runner. And that's what Jalen Hurts has been for the Eagles this season. So I do think it's something that the Chiefs try to address with Justin Reed. I think it's something that they know in the past has been a weakness as part of their defense. And it has been something that has been exposed before. And to be completely honest with you, it's not something they faced a lot this year. Again, Josh Allen was one of the quarterbacks, Malik Willis a little bit against the Titans when he really wasn't that comfortable throwing the ball. But this is not something the Chiefs have faced week after week after week, maybe as they have in previous years. So I would definitely say that's a concern. And for the Chiefs, it's crazy because when they have to put 3 linebackers out there, who do they rely upon? Leo Chanel, 3rd-round rookie. So here you go again. You're talking about relying on rookies potentially in this particular game, and especially when it comes to stopping the run and trying to stop that downhill run game that the Eagles have.
Yeah, I mean, and to just support your point there, Justin Reed, average tackle depth this year, 6.4 yards downfield. That's the lowest of his career and a pretty low number in general for a safety. So that totally fits into what you're saying about the ability to bring him in as that support player, kind of instead of bringing more of the big bodies on the field. As football gets more and more positionless, Spags is going to keep doing all that positionless stuff on defense. He loves a defensive end that can drop into coverage. He loves a safety that can come down and fill in run defense, all that kind of stuff. So that'll definitely be something to watch, though, is how the Chiefs can handle the Eagles and all of the challenges that they bring with that offensive line. All right, let's flip around to when the Chiefs have the ball. I want to stay in the trenches. The Chiefs are good up front, but they're facing an Eagles defensive front that may be even tougher than what Kansas City saw against Cincinnati. And Cincinnati did give some problems. Is there any way the Chiefs can get a run game going in this one? That was non-existent against the Bengals. And with an injured Mahomes, that becomes a really glaring weakness. Is there any way they can get that going to help protect Mahomes at least?
Well, yeah, the other thing we don't know is I really thought the run game for the Chiefs would be a big factor in this last one, because if you look at last year's AFC Championship game, and we talk about, hey, Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals, dropped 8. The Chiefs didn't know how to counter, all that stuff. I mean, one way you counter is you just line up and run the football, right? I mean, that's one way to just do that. And the Chiefs seemed really hesitant to do that in the second half as that 21-10 lead or 21-3 lead from the first half dissipated. So what they did this year is they got Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round. We talk about rookies, another rookie from Rutgers who kind of runs with his hair on fire, that downhill runner you're looking for. And then, there's been a lot of times this year where they have been more versatile and had more things they can go to, and especially the under center game. They've had a lot of success in the under center game this year with the run game, kind of the power run game that they did not have a season ago. And you're talking about an offense too, like Mahomes has barely been under center in his entire life. You think back to Texas Tech, you think back
probably
to
extra hard with the ankle too.
But that's what I was going to bring up is that I think the under center game for the Chiefs might have went away against the Bengals because you saw him hop on one leg against the Jaguars trying to get those stretch handoffs.
Right.
It was probably taken out of the game plan a little bit because it would have been tougher for Mahomes to do all the versatile stuff on his ankle that he previously was able to do. So I think it is kind of a big circle we're talking about here, which is I think the Chiefs have more ways to get to the run game. I think they've been successful with the run game. Their under center run game has been more successful than their shotgun run game. But if that's going to put stress on Mahomes' ankle, you probably go back to square one and you say, well, you're kind of left with the shotgun run game, which is a little bit of a shame because the Chiefs have sort of spent this whole season doing different things, playing different ways. They played 12 personnel, 13 personnel, the one running back, 2 tight ends, or one running back, 3 tight ends, way more than they did a season ago, more than double when it comes to 12. And so, they've kind of spent the whole year trying to figure out different ways to make sure they were matchup proof. The ankle might just change that a little bit. And who knows? Yeah. With 2 weeks, maybe it'll be better. Maybe he'll be able to do a lot more of those under center things that the Chiefs did early in the season. But without that, you're obviously going to target things to your quarterback. And if Mahomes isn't comfortable doing that, it just might have to be kind of thrown to the back of the playbook.
Yeah, I know Pacheco's been their guy the whole year back there, no doubt about it. I would like to see Edwards-Helaire if he was healthy again, because I think to what you're saying, if it's got to be the shotgun style run game, I think that's a little bit of a better fit for him, kind of doing some more of that zone read type stuff. I would be shocked if they put Ronald Jones in again after seeing his brief cameo last week. Seems like he might be finished for this year.
Yeah, well, and Ronald, he's been their third back for a while now, but that was after Clyde Edwards-Helaire was injured. And so you talk about Clyde and potentially coming back. I mean, that's a pretty easy swap if the Chiefs want to do it. You bring up Clyde and you motion down Ronald Jones and put him as the third back. And with all the injuries the Chiefs had last week, again, we'll see how these guys recover. But with enough skill position players down, it wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world if Clyde was back. And as you talked about, it's exactly right. In that sort of particular specific run game element, that might be where Clyde can really make an impact. And that's crazy to say because he wasn't great early on in the year, other than out in pass routes. He was pretty good in those, but running game was not amazing. And so if he comes back, then that would be a crazy storyline to have in the Super Bowl.
All right, one more before I want to get you out of here. We saw Spags get clever, isolate Chris Jones on the outside against Hakeem Adeniji last week. I think it's likely that the Eagles will copycat that and try to get some one-on-ones with Andrew Wiley, maybe against Hassan Reddick, maybe even a rep or two against Fletcher Cox. Is that the spot that you're most concerned about from a pass protection standpoint? And will you be focused there as you're getting ready and kind of preparing this one?
Yeah, I would say so. Overall, it's funny with offensive line. It kind of depends on the measure you're looking at. Across the board, you would say the Chiefs have a good offensive line for sure. It's somewhere between the best in the NFL and 10th best based on who you're looking at and some of the stats you look at. I know ESPN's pass win block rate, they love the Chiefs. They are far and above anybody else, but you can understand why if you look kind of up and down the line. Orlando Brown Jr. on the left side at left tackle, he's a guy that he struggled early in the season. He was battling a knee injury. Since then, has kind of stabilized. And I just saw today ESPN had an article about the top free agents this offseason. He was ranked number 2. So you're talking about a pretty good player there, even if he's not elite, not Trent Williams. But the Chiefs went out and spent a bunch of money on Joe Thuney, who's been solid at left guard. Creed Humphrey is one of the best in the game in his second year at center, a big physical player. Trey Smith at right guard. Again, he's been a mauler, has been pretty good at pass protection, but kind of his specialty is getting downhill, screens, run game, and really kind of pancaking people. But you're right. Andrew Wiley's had a great year for them, probably underratedly, one of the best, just considering what he's getting paid and kind of the production they've had. And I know people like to bring up, how many pressures he's given up. Well, newsflash too, the Chiefs throw the ball more than any team in football. So when you throw it more, there's going to be more pressures. That's how that stat works. And the pressure percentage, for him is high, and it's higher than the other guys out there. But, it should be based off of what they're getting paid and kind of the track record of all those guys in there. So, yeah, I think Wiley, if you're looking for a guy to quote unquote pick on, if you're looking for the weak link of the offensive line, it probably is Andrew Wiley on the right side, but he's held his own for most of the year too. So again, you're probably really trying to stretch to figure out how you're going to, go against this Chiefs offensive line, especially considering how they played this year. But I think Andrew Wiley's been good. He's been a great storyline for the Chiefs. But yeah, if you're looking at one of those five to try to get past, it's either speed rush against Orlando Brown, which is giving him problems on the left side, or Andrew Wiley, who's given up some pressures on the right side. Again, no knock against him based off of his history and what he's done. He's been great for the Chiefs. It's just out of those links, there's not many weak ones, and Andrew Wiley would be the lowest of those.
Jesse Newell, thank you so much for your time. Anything that you want to plug before we get out of here?
Well, no, I just appreciate you having me on. I love the Sports Info Solution stuff. I had an article a couple of weeks ago that I loved. You guys have a tracking of target in motion. So how many times do you throw to the guy who actually goes in motion? And the Chiefs were 3 times more successful with that with EPA than any other team in football. So kind of broke that down, talked to people about it. Why is that? How do they help Travis Kelce, who's the number 1 player in football? But appreciate the info there. And it's kind of cool to look at the game in different ways and figure out kind of what the Chiefs are doing that other teams aren't. And that seems like motion is one of those things where the Chiefs offense probably is a little bit ahead of the curve, and even including the Eagles ahead of the curve compared to some other teams out there. That's kind of the power of Andy Reid and scheming and trying to figure out the best way to get a guy like Travis Kelce, who, if he gets jammed at the line, it's tougher for him to get off the ball and get open. But if he moves, or if he goes behind another receiver and stacks up, that's how you get him open. That's how you get him free. And that's how you get a 33-year-old having a year as basically as good as any other one in his career. So pretty cool to look up those stats and insights. And I appreciate you guys having that info, because it does help out a beat writer when you're looking for things to look at and write about.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And to your point, Kansas City Chiefs with motion this year, they do it the 3rd most in the NFL, 61% of the time. That's not counting shifts. That's true motions. And they are number 1 in EPA per play, 0.17 EPA per attempt when they use motion. So
yeah, the story has a bunch of it's cool. They use some of it for leverage. They use some of it to stack the players. They take free releases. Obviously, the man zone tell is something a lot of teams use it for already. But the Chiefs has kind of gone next level with this. And I figure probably in 5-10 years, we'll see a lot more teams doing this once they sort of start to catch on.
All right, Jesse Newell, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Off the Charts listeners, we've got an exciting surprise for you that is dropping today on the 33rdteam.com. You can start to check out all of their NFL draft coverage right now. They've got about 100 players, scouting reports already up there, along with Sports Info Solutions data. You can check this out on the 33rdteam.com. Check out their draft coverage there. That's going to be the epicenter this year. You'll see the scouting reports. You'll see the big board. And then we've got some exciting new tools that are coming out later in the lead up to the draft that we'll be expecting to roll out over the course of the next few weeks. So check it out, the33rdteam.com. As always, you can find our different content that we put out there. You can find the different player and team pages along with the Edge matchup tool. And now the NFL draft coverage with the first bits out there, the big board and the player pages. And we've got more and more to come in that direction. Check out the 33rdteam.com. Up next in our Super Bowl preview, we've got Bo Wulf, the Eagles reporter for The Athletic. Bo, what is going on?
Not too much. Getting ready to head out to Arizona on Sunday. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm not heading out to Arizona on Sunday. I'm going to stay in the cold Northeast. This is the second time your Eagles will be back in the Super Bowl within the last few years here. Did you see this run coming? At what point this season did you really start to think that this could actually be possible there?
You know, it's interesting. I had said before the season started that if Jalen Hurts played during the season like he played over the summer, that the Eagles would win the division and he would be the long-term quarterback. But even I didn't really see like the rest of the NFC dropping back so much. You know, I thought that maybe one of the Bucks or the Rams or the Packers would sort of stay as a very good team. And I think as early as week 2 or week 3, it became pretty clear to me that the Eagles were the class of the conference. I think I wrote in week 3 after they beat the Commanders that this was already starting to feel like a special season. And it was even as early as week 2 when Jalen Hurts sort of carved up the Vikings zone defense and showed that he had really taken a leap forward as a pocket passer, that you started to sort of reconfigure what the ceiling for this team could be. And, you know, it's sort of like they had that late season lull when Gardner Minshew had to come in because Hurts was injured, and then week 18 was kind of a wonky game. But if you sort of take that out, you know, they've been the best team in the league really the whole season. And so now it's this thought experiment come to life of what matters more, like the best team in the league or the best quarterback.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those battles, and definitely reminds me of my first year working in the NFL, 2009 with the Saints. It was a case of the best team I thought we had in New Orleans against the best quarterback, Peyton Manning, at the time.
Right.
So it seems like that'll always be a thing whenever it comes to this time of year. The part that really surprises me is Jalen Hurts. I'll be the first one to tell you, coming into this year, I didn't think he was accurate enough to be able to do it. And it's interesting what you're saying, where what he did in the summer was able to translate there. Do you have a better sense of the backstory there? Because now we've seen Josh Allen sort of learn accuracy. We've seen Jalen Hurts sort of learn accuracy. This is a trait that my background as a scout was always, this is something that you can't learn. What do you think has led to this sort of development for Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, Jalen Hurts has sort of made me rethink some things that I thought were true, like single-handedly. Right. He has like turned me into more of a believer in intangibles, that like the way that a guy is wired really does matter a lot. And I think that could be a little bit of a misleading, like this is one result that could lead me to, change those priors unfairly, because he is so pathologically wired that it is like sort of unrepeatable. But the company line from the Eagles this offseason was, we don't know what Jalen Hurts' ceiling is, but we feel very confident that whatever it is, he will hit it, because that's the way he's wired. And I would have been skeptical of that. And I was skeptical of, this is the first time in his career that he gets to play the second season in the same offense with the same play caller since he was in high school. How much does that really matter? And I think it has turned out to matter a little bit. He's been more confident in pre-snap reads. And, you talk to coaches about how important it is to build up that bank of reps at the next level. And I think that has really paid off for him. The one thing about accuracy is, I remember talking to Doug Peterson about this and talking to him about Carson Wentz as a prospect. It was interesting. This surprised me. He said, he had everything that we wanted except for accuracy. And we felt very confident that we could coach the accuracy into him. And that always struck as like you said, opposite of what I would have thought, that like you could coach up some other things, but accuracy is more natural. And it seemed like that mechanically there are things that they could work on. And Jalen Hurts, he took time in his offseason. He spent a few months in California, rather, working on his accuracy. Aside from the team facility, he really did take it upon himself to try to improve as a passer. And you've seen it in terms of like his willingness to throw the ball over the middle, his ability to roll left and throw the ball. And it has been a huge jump, and it has sort of like recalibrated the way that I feel about quarterback development.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always looking at this. And I will say, when I look at Josh Allen and some of the breakdowns he had in the playoffs, you could come back to it and you can just see his mechanics aren't there in a very basic level, just not pointing his foot at the target that he's trying to get the ball to, things like that, when his accuracy would break down. And I did, like you said, for that reason, I'm not ready to bet on people being able to learn accuracy, but I will bet on somebody. What did you call him? Pathologically wired?
Yeah, he is. It's like, he's sort of like cosplaying as Michael Jordan to a degree. My partner on the beat, Zach Berman, wrote about this week, that like he never even saw Michael Jordan play. He's not old enough. He's taken on that sort of persona in his mind. He even has like the one hoop earring in his left ear. There's a picture of him after the NFC Championship game smoking a cigar, where it's as if that he's like trying to just pretend to be Michael Jordan. Like from a very young age, he took on the coaching from his dad, who was a high school football coach. And it's like all of the like Nick Sabanisms, these things that sound like things you're just saying to stop a question, are things that he like takes seriously and lives his life by. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by the way that he's been able to develop himself in a way that he's still kind of working within himself. And to give an example of that, my colleague, Alex Vigderman, he wrote an awesome article today on sportsinfosolutions.com. It'll be going up about these two quarterbacks and how different they are. And the way that he looked at it was throughout the play, 1 second in, 2 seconds in, 3 seconds in, 4 seconds in, what's the likelihood of either a clean pocket throw, a throw under pressure, a scramble, or a sack? And what you see here is just two totally different players. Mahomes is an alien. We all know that. He's got everything going. Best player in the NFL. I don't think many people would contest that notion. He's got this weird pattern where he basically never takes sacks. And in fact, as plays go on longer and longer, he actually takes fewer sacks than he would earlier in the play. It's this sort of backwards land, only Mahomes sort of thing. But then as the play goes on, he's very likely to get a throw off, and it's very likely to be a throw under pressure. Not very likely to have these sort of unaffected throws. Meanwhile, you look at Jalen Hurts, and he's got a totally different chart where what you see with him is he's pretty likely, compared to Mahomes and most quarterbacks, to either scramble or get sacked at any point throughout the play, right? As it kind of moves up, it ticks up as you would expect, but there's kind of that likelihood there. But what he doesn't do is make those under pressure throws. He's either very likely to make a clean pocket throw, or he's going to run with it. And maybe he'll get tackled before the line of scrimmage. Maybe he'll get tackled after the line of scrimmage. But he doesn't even try to make those, oh God, I'm under pressure, let me try to salvage this thing like Mahomes would. I think a big key to his success this year has actually been not trying to do that stuff and just trying to do this stuff that is a kind of higher percentage play.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it passes the eye test because you look at like his success rate as a runner, and it's far and away the best in the league. He's really good at identifying when the first and maybe the second read is gone and there's an open window to run. He'll take it. And it's interesting because he has gotten hurt at the end of the season the last 2 years. But generally speaking, he's really good at avoiding contact when he does run. He's a very precise scrambler. And it's a different type of scramble than like Lamar Jackson, where it's this like electric, make you miss super speed. It's like very efficient. He'll take like a straight line to the precise angle on the sideline where he can get to and not get hit. And he'll still make a couple people miss in the open field. He's a much more powerful runner, but he is really good at that. And I do think that he'll make the contested throws early in downs. I would bet that the breakdown bears that out. Like you saw his throw against the Niners in the NFC Championship game on that opening drive on third down, where he sort of goes to his right on his back foot, throws it over the middle, and AJ Brown makes a nice catch down low. But that sort of makes sense. As the plays go on, he is much more willing to be sacked or scramble. He doesn't usually. It's curious because for a mobile quarterback, he doesn't complete that many passes while he's like scrambling around like a Mahomes, who you say is an alien.
Yeah, it's like always like do you scramble to throw or do you scramble to run? He definitively scrambles to run, and It works for him. It's kind of the opposite, actually, thinking back, another Eagles quarterback, Donovan McNabb. The scariest thing with him would be when the play broke down and he sort of got moving on outside the pocket. He'd be scrambling to throw all the time. And it seemed like a lot of his biggest throws came in those situations. This is flipping that on its head. It's saying, first couple of reads are gone, we like you as an athlete compared to all these dudes out there. Go make a positive play out of it. And more often than not, he does.
I think that's also a credit to the coaching staff, right? And the offensive scheme. 100%. They've given him that flexibility and embraced it, which I think early last year, we weren't so sure that was going to be the case, like whether they were married to Jalen Hurts, whether they wanted to sort of make him try to be a square peg in a round hole and be this quarterback. And they've really opened up the offense and embraced his strengths.
Yeah, it's impressive. I'm wondering, as a potential Eagles homer here, would you make the case for Hurts over Mahomes for the regular season MVP award, or is that too far for you to go?
Well, I'll object to the homer angle. I'm trying to be objective here, but I would make the case for Hurts as number 2. I have made the case for Mahomes. He's the best, as you said, he's the best player in football, and also he played 2 extra games. I think if you switch those 2 guys, the Eagles offense would still be nuclear, and I'm not quite as sure that the Chiefs offense would be as good.
Okay, you are definitely clear of any homer accusations going forward based on that one. All right, before we get out of here, the excitement about the matchup is really starting to grow. I'm personally excited, not that they'll face each other, but Kelce against Kelce. That's our number 1 tight end by total points this year. Our player value stat against our number 1 offensive lineman by total points, our player value stat. Those guys are pretty good. They're playing pretty well at this point in their career. What are you looking forward to when we get Super Bowl Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be fun. And I know that it'll be like an overcovered storyline by the end of next week. Those guys are going to get asked about it a lot. I talked to Kelce in the locker room before that Chiefs game was over, just about the possibility. And it's, it is wild that they start this podcast this year. It's all leading up to this, and it ends up happening. They both get a Pro Bowl, an All-Pro nod. I think Kelce's got 4 now. He's probably going to be headed to Canton one day, and probably his brother too. So it is crazy, and you have to think about what a wild day that's going to be for their parents. But in terms of the matchups that I'm most looking forward to, I guess if the Eagles are going to get to Mahomes, The matchup that you look at is probably Hassan Reddick against Andrew Wiley. Reddick has been so good over the course of the playoffs. He had 3.5 sacks in 2 games, which is already the most sacks for an Eagles player in the postseason. I think that's the place where, like, if you're going to get Mahomes, you got to get him quick, as you said about those numbers. That could happen. Just the Eagles pass rush against the Chiefs offensive line, I think is if the Eagles are going to make enough stops or force a couple turnovers, that's where it's going to happen.
Like every other game this season, the Eagles working with an advantage in the trenches, probably on both sides of the ball. I agree with you 100%. I actually asked, for the listeners, it'll be earlier this podcast, Jesse Newell of the Chiefs. I asked him about that Andrew Wiley, Hassan Reddick matchup, even the potential of a rep or two against a Fletcher Cox, maybe moving out there in a similar way that we saw the Chris Jones, Hakeem Adeniji matchup. Maybe there's something in that. And so he seemed pretty confident, but also was willing to admit that if there is a weak point on the offensive line, it's on the tackles. They're strong up the middle, but the tackles are definitely the place where I think you can cause issues there. And the whole thing is going to be obviously coming down. Which Mahomes are we going to get? What's the Mahomes health going to be? It's hard to say where that's going to be. But if you can get him off his spot, you certainly have a lot better chance against him than if he's just hanging back there.
Exactly. And I also wonder, Brandon Graham rotating in there. He made the big play 5 years ago to force the fumble on Tom Brady. Maybe he does something again in what has been a throwback season for him.
The player who actually will be lined up against Jason Kelce is Chris Jones. And that's another matchup. That's an actual matchup that we can just
crazy.
I mean, it's going to be incredible watching Chris Jones, whoever he's lined up against on that Eagles offensive line. It should be awesome.
It's fascinating. Yeah. It's like you would put these two rosters against each other, and you might take like 3 Chiefs, maybe 4 or 5 if you take the safeties or one of the linebackers. But it's like Chris Jones, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce against the best roster in football.
Yep. That pretty much sums it up. All right, Bo Wulf, thank you so much for joining us here. Anything we can plug on the way out?
Sure. You can listen to our Eagles podcast, Birds with Friends, wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out the work of Zach Berman and myself on The Athletic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and we will sign off and get out of here. For Jesse Newell of the Chiefs, Bo Wulf of the Eagles, and our producer, Justin Stein, I'm Matt Manocherian, and thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Off the Charts Football Podcast.